The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
I saw a pale horse.
The beast.
We're told in the book of Revelation.
This is not a human child.
Isn't an angel?
Armageddon is almost upon us.
Order the use of nuclear weapons.
The world is a fine place and worth fighting for.
From one end of the world to the other, I will oppose you.
They're here.
Welcome to the end of the world.
Wrestling not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. This is P.I.D. Radio.
From the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, greetings and welcome to P.I.D. Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and welcome to our humble bunker, everybody. We are delighted to have you here. It's a great day. I think spring is here.
It is February 25th, 2018, and
Mark
temperatures nearly in the 60s. I think we've passed through the last.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Got up this morning and there was a
Winter.
hard frost on the ground. Sam was not happy. But we've discovered something useful. If you've not already tried this, I posted it to my Facebook wall. We've discovered that the deck, when it ices up, is dangerous for a dachshund to go down the stairs,
Yeah.
even to walk out onto the deck. And if we put down red carpeting, in other words, towels that just happen to be red, but we put down towels, they stick sort of pretty well, almost like they've got rubber backing on them, but they sort of grip to the ice. It allows him to get a good foothold
Yeah. Get
and
up
go
down.
safely down the steps.
Yeah. A lot easier on his paws, the pads on his paws, I would think, than having to walk across granulated ice melt or
I've
rock
never
salt.
And that's kind of hard on the decking anyway, but
It
I
is,
especially
sure.
think of it, he's got that, he licks his paws, you can tell
Yeah,
he's trying to get
yeah.
it out of there.
So
Doesn't look like fun.
the red carpet, and of course he says that's just, the way he should be treated anyway. So it's worked out well. But it looks
Pomp and
like,
circumstance has to be played, though, when he walks down it.
or hail to the chief, he'll take
Either one, yeah.
But we appear to have passed through the last, at least for the next 10 days or so, of sub-freezing temperatures. Anyway, sub-zero if you're in Celsius. Sub-freezing temperatures for the next 10 days. Might get close one day next week, but boy, it looks like a lot better than what we've had the last 10 days or so.
And we're closing in very quickly on our trip to Dallas, Texas. So, yes, just about 3.5 weeks away. 24 days from now.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to that.
Maybe
and
it's 23. Not long.
Well, 22nd through the 25th, so 1 month. Today being the 25th.
Yeah.
I know February is a short month, so okay, we miss a few days toward the end there.
Well, 4 weeks from today, we'll be winding things up. We'll be at the, seriously, we'll be at the last presentation probably.
And looking forward to it.
I
Some
know.
great folks gathering there. In fact, just found out today, a friend of mine from back in Illinois with whom I served on the Illinois district of the Barbershop Harmony Society will be coming down. He's written a book, and I'll be talking to some folks about that. So, in fact, he was a guest on, I can say his name because he's been a guest on A View from the Bunker, Hugo Fugan.
Yes, he wrote a great book looking into the story behind
Loretta Fuddy.
I couldn't remember her first name, Loretta Fuddy, who was killed in a plane crash, and she happened to be the state
Director of Health.
Director of Health, that was it, who signed off on the Obama birth certificate.
Which was proven conclusively to be a fake.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean that there isn't an authentic birth certificate out there somewhere. It's just that the one that the Obama White House released was it was a cut and paste job in Photoshop.
And you have to wonder why that happened. But he gets into that. It's a fascinating book. If you're interested in it, is it at Amazon?
It's called The Fuddy Hoax. That's the website where you would get it, thefuddyhoax.com.
F-U-D-D-Y.
F-U-D-D-Y, yeah. And Hugo is he's an aviation expert. He helped develop, if I'm not mistaken, a very popular what's the word I'm looking for? Simulator app that's used by a lot of airlines to train airline pilots around the country.
Yeah.
So he's an aviation expert, and working together with a researcher, they document that the story that was fed to the media about the crash of that plane, and she was the only one of 10 people on this small commuter plane that ditched just offshore in calm water. She was the only one of 10 who died in that crash. And the story was not, I mean, there's some basic things like the flight path even was misrepresented to the media, and other things that just don't make any sense.
That the media is actually told to spin a story a certain way.
Looking forward to putting him together with Carl Gallups at the conference, because Carl is all about the birth certificate and has been behind information, working into that investigation for a long time.
With Sheriff Arpaio.
Yes. Yeah. So hopefully we can get them together. Maybe do a View from the Bunker with Carl and Hugo.
Oh, that would be fascinating. Yeah. I hope that works out. Anyway. It's been interesting. And honestly, as I said, that this idea of spinning the media to tell a story the way the government or the king or whatever wants it told. I've been watching the TV series Versailles. Mm-hmm. I like to watch historical dramas for a number of reasons. One is to sort of put myself into that past, because I'm writing in the past. It helps me to do that in a land where you cannot get there with a car. You have to use a horse-drawn carriage or this and that.
So, like Blackadder.
Yes, that's the whole reason I watched Blackadder with you recently.
Upstart Crow, things
exactly,
like that. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the whole. It's all research for the book.
That's right.
But Versailles, I wouldn't recommend watching that with your children, and don't watch it if you have problems with on-screen nudity, because there's a bunch of it. But to me, it's not necessarily gratuitous. It probably occasionally, wanders afield and does put in things it doesn't. There are a couple of scenes, honestly, where I just like, no, we really needed to see that. But it was a debauched era.
Well, yeah, and those
the court
in power
of Louis
XIV,
as with many kings and queens, was debauched.
Yeah. Now, and Louis XIV, wasn't he sainted by the Roman Catholic Church?
Oh, probably. He was a great defender of the church, and he was what is known as the Sun King. And there are a number of reasons for that. He felt that the sun rose and set on himself. And in fact, I was looking today to see how much accuracy, historical speaking, the facts wander afield in the seasons of the drama. There are 2 seasons that have been released for Netflix viewers. I think there's a 3rd season out there, though, but it's not available yet for streaming. It apparently is relatively close, about as close as something like this is going to stick to the original facts. But I bring this up because one of the stories, and this is something he actually did do, he hired Louis XIV, the real Louis XIV, hired essentially a scriptwriter to write his histories.
Really?
Yeah. A man who wrote fiction, wrote poetry, wrote stories, a bard, to write his history, the history of his, his reign. The official history of Louis XIV is written by a man who writes fiction. And
by the way, just so I could clarify right up front, it was Louis IX who was St. Louis, not Louis XIV.
Yeah, St. Louis is actually named after that.
Louis IX,
yeah.
Right, okay.
But anyway, Louis XIV, spin doctor from the beginning. I want to get somebody that I can control who will tell the people what I want them to believe about their lives.
Yeah, and that's not a new thing. I'm sure this was going on way, way back, as long as there's been writing, and even probably before. The Egyptian pharaohs were probably using pictographs and to depict, to put forward the same message.
Well, I think so too. There's nothing new under the sun, and so when we see in our mainstream media, what we perceive as falsehoods,
right?
It's not. It's been going on for a long time.
Yeah, this idea that we have in America of the media being fair and balanced until recently when that darn MSNBC came on. Well, that's really a misperception. The media has never been fair and balanced. It's always had a particular point of view. Even when the reporters try to be fair and balanced, we're always filtering. And I say we because I spent some time as a radio news reporter, small markets, but still. We try to present the facts, but we're always filtering things through our own biases, our own education, upbringing, and so forth. The older you get, the wider your frame of reference becomes, and the more
and sometimes the wider your frame.
And the wider your frame, too. And sometimes you become less tolerant, too. So I don't know, but you become
We're
a little...
never like that, doggone it, don't you say that.
But when you go back into American history and look at But really, this concept is relatively new, almost since World War II, where we're believing that reporters are completely objective and unbiased. But when you go back and look at American media, say the War of 1812, they were throwing accusations around back and forth. I mean, things were said about Thomas Jefferson in the media by the opposition media that would, probably get rejected by major network broadcasters today.
Very much so.
So it's not a new thing. Media has always had a point of view. That's why we've said before why there are so many newspapers in America called the Republican or the Democrat or the whatever Labor News, whatever. They usually came out of some political party or background or sponsor who had a particular view that he wanted to promote.
The one good thing about that, though, back in the day when, a small town would have competing papers that one had this viewpoint and another had that viewpoint, I'm going to report the things that make my candidate look the best. At least it was obvious back then.
Sure, true. Yeah.
Not so much now. If you are only tuning into the main letters, then you're missing a lot.
Yeah. And a lot has changed since I got into broadcasting originally back in 1980. For one thing, you had to take an FCC test to get a third-class license to even go on the air. Nowadays, it's like any joker who can push a button can broadcast. The media, and of course, the internet has made it.
Or have a podcast.
Yeah. Woohoo! Good thing, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But
Mr. Joker.
But the rule used to be that no company could own more than 7 AM, 7 FM, and 7 TV stations as a total portfolio. And I worked for a company in Peoria that had 1 AM and no more than one of each in a single market. So I worked for an AM, FM, TV combo. But now that same company owns, several radio stations together. I mean, the company that we worked for back in 06 and 07 had, 9 radio stations in mid-Missouri?
Yeah, I think that was what now. There are some really big media conglomerates right now that you're going to recognize the big names like Comcast, Walt Disney, Time Warner, CBS, things like that, Viacom. But there are other companies that you probably have never heard of.
Sinclair.
That Sinclair, which really surprised me, and they own over 50% of all screens in the U.S.
Right. Then you've got Clear Channel and Cumulus. There are other big broadcasters out there that own, upwards of 1,400, 1,500, 1,600 radio stations. Where, again, remember, until about 84, 85, somewhere, no, it was after that because it was after I left Peoria. So until the 80s, when that was deregulated, you could only own 21 stations total, 7 AM, 7 FM, 7 TV, to prevent no one company from having that much influence over the editorial content consumed by Americans.
These are actual media companies you and I are talking about, though.
Yes.
I would argue that social media has taken over.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because YouTube now has more young adult viewers than any cable network in the United States. So it's bypassing the broadcasters.
Yeah. Well, take a look at Facebook and Twitter, even Instagram to a certain degree, how much they influence opinion. Right.
And that's why Donald Trump has been so successful using Twitter, just to bypass the media filters of ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. Those 6 main, plus, I'd say the Washington Post and New York Times, but the truth is they really aren't opinion shapers anymore, except for the media elites themselves.
Exactly.
In their little echo chamber. But the fact is, and I noticed this more than 10 years ago because I ranted about it on the air one day, which was kind of awkward because I was talking about mainly Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity.
Oh,
and
who were on the same station.
Well, we didn't have Limbaugh. Limbaugh was on the AM station.
Oh, that's true.
Which is why it was so cool that we beat the AM station in our target demographics.
I think it was mainly you. I beat them.
Well, nah.
Your show was really popular.
Well, we did well. God bless us. We had a really good morning show. I did the afternoon program, but I think we marketed the station well and we positioned it a little more libertarian than just straight line Republican. And I think that had a big difference. Here in Missouri, people are a little more independent minded. Yeah, socially conservative, but true conservative, and not really happy with the Republican Party at the national level, which is why you get out into rural America, like where we are, Donald Trump is really popular. because we just love the way, and I say we collectively, I mean, I'm not speaking for everybody, of course, but generally speaking, the people who supported Donald Trump love the way he's kicking the elites in the pants. I mean, we don't agree with everything he does and everything he says, and sometimes he's crude, and I'm not sure that, I'd enjoy hanging out with him. Probably enjoy dinner with Bill Clinton more than Donald Trump. But having said that, Trump is really upsetting the elites who've gotten us into these endless wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, who've been supporting social programs. Even Republicans have been supporting social agendas with which most conservatives disagree. And Trump is coming in and he's actually doing something about it. Yeah, we're going to move the embassy. Guess what? We're moving the embassy on this specific date. And like, what? I mean, this is something Republicans have been talking on for a long time, but they've just been talking, not doing.
Yeah. And in fact, you discovered a story this morning that Netanyahu has invited Trump to be in Jerusalem the day the embassy moves, which is Jerusalem Day, May 14th of this year. Right. The day that you and I and the tour that we're going on,
Year 70 tour,
we will be in Jerusalem when all of this takes place. Right.
This is a report from Israeli media. Breaking Israel News, which is based in Jerusalem, is reporting this, but it's based on an account from Hadashat News, which I'm not familiar with. But it says that Netanyahu is expected to invite President Trump for the opening of the embassy in May, which would take place, according to the report, on the 70th anniversary of Israel's independence. And of course, our tour just happens to be scheduled on that day. And that's Sharon's doing, because when Aaron Lipkin at Lipkin Tours suggested a few potential dates, Sharon looked at the calendar and was like, hey, do you realize this sequence of dates here coincides with the 70th anniversary? Take that! Take that window!
The Lord worked it out. I'm so grateful for that. And I think it's going to be a very exciting day to be there, whether Trump is there or not.
True, absolutely.
But because of the way some rabbis have been viewing prophecy and how it relates to President Trump, I think that it's going to be a crazy time to be there.
Right. Now, and some people have asked us, aren't you concerned about
safety,
being there on the 70th anniversary? Well,
I'm in the Lord's hand. Exactly. What better place is there to be?
Yeah. If something were to happen and that turned out to be our last journey anywhere ever, what better place to be called home than from Jerusalem?
That's what I think too.
But looking at this from a practical standpoint, especially if the president is going to be there, you got to believe that Jerusalem will be one of the most secure places on the planet.
Exactly. It may be the safest place to be anywhere that day.
Yeah. So anyway, it's remarkable how media shapes our perceptions without our even realizing it. And I think this surprised me. I saw this just a little while ago. Rasmussen, which is one of the major polling companies that tracks the political temperature of America on a regular basis, they've been tracking the president's approval rating on a daily basis. And Gallup has gotten out of that. So now Rasmussen, which is one of the more accurate polling companies, has found that the president's approval rating as of today is at 50%.
That's tremendous.
You wouldn't know it from the major media. And that's kind of my point, because that's 5 points higher than Barack Obama was at the same point of his administration, 2 years in, or in his second year in office. Donald Trump is more popular than Barack Obama was, but you wouldn't know it from the way the media reports. So it's really just a reminder not to believe everything you see, hear, or read. Dig a little deeper and then trust your gut. Trust your gut. Expose yourself to opinions that you might disagree with just to find out what others are thinking. You may be persuaded to change your mind. I mean, sometimes we fall victim to just searching out confirmation bias. Mm-hmm. I know what I know, and I only want to hear from people who agree with what I know. Well, okay, sometimes I don't have time to be bothered with people who are expressing opinions that I know are not founded on good information or sound reasoning. But there are times when there are stories out there where I don't really know all the facts. And so maybe I need to listen to some people who I normally disagree with to kind of get a better sense of what's actually going on.
Yep, I agree with that. I think that it
takes a little work, but
if we expect the media to be fair and balanced, as to use a turn of phrase, then you have to look in a lot of different spots to see how the story's being spun, because the fact is that even if you went immediately after an event and interviewed everybody there who witnessed it, you're likely to get a bunch of different stories.
Right. Yeah. Try to triangulate on the truth.
Let's dive into the stories today.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of stories, here's one that I just found. A lot of schools use CCTV.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of cities use CCTV.
Right.
But schools are doing it more and more, especially in the light of things that recently happened. Some schools have CCTV cameras installed in the restrooms.
Mm-hmm. Well, so kids go to sneak a smoke or a joint?
Yes. Apparently, an organization has successfully hacked into some of these school CCTVs inside the restrooms and posted the video online.
Why in the world would anybody connect a camera like that through the internet?
Isn't that a good question?
Because the only way you can hack it from outside is if it's connected to the internet. Connected to a network somehow.
Or if somehow it's Bluetooth enabled and connected to something that it's recording to next to it. But yeah, it had to be connected.
In other words, it's not like an old-fashioned system where it's hardwired to a VCR or some sort of recording device. It's connected to a network somehow.
Yes, and it's probably to make it easier on the individuals watching the footage.
We don't want to run, cable through the walls and stuff. That's hard.
So
if we just,
hard.
Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, we just connect it wirelessly. We can put it wherever we want. Well, yeah, but that also means somebody can get in and get those images and get that video.
And most schools probably don't have really well-paid, sophisticated IT personnel.
Exactly.
But you wouldn't think that you'd have to be highly sophisticated or well-trained. Just maybe thinking logically. First thing you do when you install the camera is look and see if you're going to connect to Wi-Fi, password protect it.
Right, exactly.
Most of these probably are not.
Right. You got to do something and use a password that's not really simple.
Password is not a good one.
Exactly. And even if you do that, and I'm certainly not an IT expert, but I suspect that people are really good at that particular type of thing, have figured out ways around passwords.
Oh, yeah.
There are ways. In fact, it was recently revealed that, what was it? The way Intel developed processing chips, not just for Macs or not just for Windows machines, but for Macs too. It developed a way of sort of guessing what kind of information you would need next, and kind of stashing that just in anticipation of what you were going to do. And hackers very cleverly figured out that you could use that, you could exploit that to get access to passwords, and then use those passwords to compromise machines.
Well, one of the bad things about this is that it gets into this idea of voyeurism, being able to live stream an event, live stream something that should be kept private. And it also gets into what you and I have discussed before, this idea of let's put connected camera, enabled devices inside bedrooms that children are in.
Yeah.
And there are parents that think, no, but I want to be at work and want to be able to make sure little Johnny's okay, or make sure my dog is okay, or whatever it happens to be. But if you are doing anything that you would just as soon be private, then don't have it in there.
Yeah, which means phone or tablet. And we say this and,
we have them in our bedroom too. It's just, you have to, be very judicious about this and make sure that your device, if it's internet enabled, that you have and we do on our Wi-Fi router, it is a very strong password.
Right.
So
it would take
people are listening to that going,
yeah. So you think, even having said that now, I think maybe not a bad idea to put a little piece of black tape over that little camera there. But it's something we don't think about because we are so desensitized to the presence of these cameras, cameras in our phones, cameras in our, my iPod's got an HD camera in it.
When you think about it, we've got eyes watching us all the time.
We do. 1, 2, 3. 3 in this room alone, connected with cameras.
Yeah.
Two more in that room.
Next room.
Well, my iPod's in there, so that's 3.
My iPod's in there too.
Okay, so that's 4.
Its battery is dead, so.
Oh, well, there you go.
It's not seeing anything.
Smart. Really smart. That'll fix them. So, but yeah, they're everywhere. And we're being... This, I think, may be one reason Americans seem to be so meh when it comes to this story about the investigation into Carter Page, the volunteer in the Donald Trump campaign, the Steele memo, the Steele dossier. Mm-hmm. And this was the so-called Trump dossier, which has now been renamed the Steele dossier. It should be the Clinton Steele dossier, since it was the Clinton campaign that paid for it.
Yes.
When BuzzFeed put out that information, and it was all, oh my gosh, did you hear what the president? Well, it turned out to be all bogus information. But the backstory behind that dossier is that the FBI, and I won't go into the detail because I did this in a View from the Bunker episode a couple of weeks ago, in a nutshell, was using NSA intercepts, basically email and phone intercepts, to spy on somebody connected to the Trump campaign, hoping that they could get something on Donald Trump that they could then leak to the press and derail his campaign. It didn't happen, but the Democratic Party and the FBI and the major media are basically spinning like a guy stuck in snow and ice, trying to deflect from the use of this dossier and trying to deflect attention, I think, away from the Fourth Amendment violations that took place by the FBI, inside the FBI during this whole period of time. I mean, the Fourth Amendment says that we're not supposed to be, we're supposed to be protected against unreasonable search and seizure.
Right.
The government is supposed to go to a judge if they want to search through our stuff and tell the judge why we're suspect and what they hope to find, what they're going to search and what they hope to find.
But this is warrantless.
This is warrantless wiretapping by the NSA, which the government has made an institutional thing since the 2001 Patriot Act.
Right, but the problem is that you and I and nearly everybody who's listening to this right now, we volunteer that information all the time.
We
and
do.
If we go on social media and volunteer it, or they may even say they have willingly put a camera into this room, therefore...
No expectation of privacy.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, they're making that claim about being outdoors. If you're out in a public place, you have no expectation of privacy. But what is really taking place is they're listening in to all of our phone calls. Well, they're not listening in. Let's put it this way. They're capturing all of our phone calls, all of our emails, and almost all of our social media stuff. And then when they think they've got a reason to be suspicious of somebody, then they go to the court and say, okay, here's who we want to investigate. And then they can go through all the stuff that they've collected. But the thing is, they're collecting it.
Yes.
Before having a reason to suspect us.
And they've got bots that automatically translate what's being said.
And
why do you think that YouTube very quickly gives a transcript of what's on those videos?
And
it's because the bots do it, and it's so that anything said is known.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. And it's why videos with undesirable, from their standpoint, search terms or undesirable phrases like crisis actor are being taken down. In fact, InfoWars, Alex Jones's channel, got hit with a strike by YouTube. And, if you get 3 strikes against you, basically they spike your channel and you're offline. Because they posted a video speculating that young man who's been on a lot of media over the last week or so, since the shooting in Parkland, Florida, David Hogg, was a crisis actor. Well, I don't think he's a crisis actor. I think he's a wannabe broadcaster. And so because he's willing to repeat lines that are being given to him, anti-gun.
I agree with you there.
That he's getting a lot of FaceTime on cameras. And, people are saying, well, he's a crisis actor. Well, no.
No, I don't think so.
Crisis actor implies that what happened in Florida at Stoneman Douglas High School was fake, that kids really didn't die, that this all was just a piece of theater to convince the American public that we need to get rid of our guns.
And no, we do not believe that. We don't think that that's what happened at all. We think that young people lost their lives, and there were brave individuals like that coach who lost their lives. And sadly, we're now finding out that there were trained police officers who did not lose their lives, who actually hid.
Yeah. Officer on duty was filmed.
Well, as many as 4.
Yeah, 4 now. That's right. Yeah, I like the way they put this. He took a position outside the building. What do you mean take a position? Just stand there?
I
am taking a position right now. So are you. We're taking positions. It sounds so official. Basically, they've got him on CCTV standing outside while shots are being fired inside, and kids are dying.
Yeah, now it's difficult to know how any one of us would react in that situation, but
right.
If you have been trained properly by the police department, then you should automatically go into that defensive mode.
Yeah.
Defending the people you've been hired to defend, not yourself.
Mm-hmm. This was, they called a resource deputy. He was armed, unlike the football coach who was security but was unarmed and could only put himself in between the shooter and the students.
Yeah. And
died as a result. But if you're armed and you hear shots inside the building, and again, I get it, that it's difficult to say how one would respond in the same situation. I don't know what I would do. I pray I'm never in that situation. But if you're trained as an armed guard who is charged with defending the students inside who are unarmed and the teachers who are unarmed, it's a gun-free zone.
Exactly.
You're the only one legally with a gun in the building. You're the one whose job it is to run towards the gunfire.
And it's possible that had these 4 officers actually done that, or even one of them, that gunman would have been taken out right away.
You're right. And there were, as you say, there were three other officers who arrived there and found that the school resource officer was there taking a position.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, it is tragic. But again, the media, and this kind of is turning into the theme of the program, the media is using this to present one side of the story. CNN held its town hall on a Wednesday, the week after the shooting, 1 week after the shooting. Dana Lash, who's a conservative radio host, spokesperson for the NRA, was invited to basically sit there and take abuse from the students who called her killer. Okay, fine. Anyway, there was a young man there who's in the junior ROTC program who had wanted to deliver a short speech and then ask a question of the panel assembled by CNN about the possibility of using military veterans as armed security in schools. Sounds like a great idea to me.
I think it's a great idea. Yeah. I do.
But the producer for the segment, for CNN, the producer of that program said, no, here's a list of questions. Choose one of these. They gave scripted questions.
Well, that's probably something that happens far more than we'd want to know because, think about many town halls that take place during political rallies, campaigns. Mm-hmm. You don't really want somebody coming up and just asking something, that your candidate can't answer or will be embarrassed answering.
Sure, yeah. Because ever since 1960, when they had the first televised debates between Kennedy and Nixon, politicians have learned very quickly from that debate where Nixon was not on his game. He was on cold medication. He was tired, looked sweaty, nervous. He was not focused because of the cold medication. How powerful the visual image can be. And
cigarette smoking man was probably backstage patting him on the back. How you doing there, Dick?
Yeah, a little tap on the shoulder, and he was totally out of it. And by the way, let me say this about David Hogg. There are those, and I think this may have been part of, I've not watched the InfoWars segment on David Hogg, so I don't know why YouTube flagged it, but I know that there are others who have accused Hogg of not knowing his lines, his scripted lines, because there's some raw video that's been put out there of him doing multiple takes for the shoot for CNN.
That's done all the time.
That's my point. This doesn't mean that Hogg was fed lines. It just means that every news package put together ever will do this. If they don't get quite the line that they want from the witness can you say that but with a little more emotion?
Yeah.
Or they'll rephrase the question. Can you ask the question back to me so that viewers understand what question we've just asked you? And they will try to ask and frame the question so they get the responses they want for the camera to make the package more compelling.
It's done all the time.
And again, young Mr. Hogg wants to be, apparently, I mean, he's a member, I did see this is confirmed, he's a member of the school's drama club. So he's got a bit of a thespian
And that's
event.
how you go into broadcasting
And
these
that's how you
days,
go
is
into
you go
broadcasting.
into theater.
Yeah, a number of the television broadcasters I knew didn't come out of journalism school. They came out of school with degrees in drama.
Everyone that I knew that was going to go into that was in the drama school.
Right.
Yeah.
So don't think that this kid was being fed lines necessarily. Maybe he was, but it doesn't mean, just the video that I saw doesn't mean that he was. To me, it just looked like every stand-up shot produced by any news organization in America ever in the last couple of decades. So,
well, let's go off on another. Let's just move away from this for a second here,
sure,
and talk about the Xbox Ghost.
Oh, the Xbox, and I've not looked at this. What? I
haven't either. I just saw that you're the one that saved this. I didn't save this. You did, because you mentioned it to me a few days ago.
Oh, I thought.
Apparently, there's a technology glitch that may show a paranormal.
Oh, that's right. I did save this. I just didn't read it.
But you shared it to social media.
Mandela's ghost came along and just totally wiped my brain.
You're so funny.
Yeah, Xboxes
are being used as ghost detectors.
Ghost hunter in Australia claims he's got video evidence of the ghost of a small boy that he found using a spirit detection device made from an Xbox.
Do you remember the movie White Noise?
Yeah, Michael Keaton.
It's this idea that if you take a videotape of a videotape of a videotape, that eventually you start seeing things.
Yeah. Well.
And it has to be noise.
Yeah, it was, the film wasn't, as I recall, I was kind of disappointed. It wasn't as compelling as I thought it was going to be.
I thought it was pretty creepy, actually.
It's been so long, I don't even really remember the film.
His wife had died. He was determined to get her back or to somehow
make contact. He was using this method to do it.
And he met this one guy. It was it's almost a thriller. But this is what was going on. He was following the advice of this man that he'd found on the internet or something. And so he was setting up all these cameras, and one was just running this sort of white noise loop, and the other cameras were recording, and then one camera was recording what was being recorded on a monitor. And eventually you start hearing sounds and seeing things. And I've read that there have been experiments doing that very thing, and the claim is, we're talking Prince and Power of the Air,
right,
is that eventually you do see things.
Interesting. Well, this fellow in Australia, who's apparently got an engineering background, used the Xbox to connect, what do they call the Connect SLS camera, and He's taking it out ghost hunting, but an editor at Gizmodo said that ghosts from the Kinect camera, that's KINECT, aren't anything new in Xbox technology, but could just be the result of imperfect algorithms inside the processor itself.
And I remember now when you were telling me about this story, I said, you're saying to me that an algorithm is creating a ghost.
Yeah. It's interesting because the difference between this and the White Noise film, of course, is that White Noise, you're using magnetic tape, whereas this would be recording a digital image.
Exactly.
But the editor at Gizmodo, Tegan Jones, said there's no scientific way to test the setup in a controlled environment to see if it actually works before you take it out into the field, mostly because there are no ghosts to test in a lab.
Well, none that you see, but that's the question.
Yeah, as far as you know.
In order to have a control group, okay, we need 5 ghost volunteers. Oh, I always get these jobs. I don't want to be. I want to be in the experimental
I want
group.
to be a crisis actor.
A crisis ghost. Well, it would be difficult to prove that it's actually taking place, but ask if you've ever watched any of these ghost hunter shows, and I've actually heard this from people who have tried it, and it's happened to me. If you go into a cemetery and take photographs, and I've done this on digital cameras and film, you get some weird images.
And that's intriguing because from a Christian standpoint, most of us have been told that ghosts don't exist. And I've actually changed my mind over that, about that over the years, especially after reading the late Chris Putnam's book, Supernatural Worldview. In the Bible, the spirit of Samuel the prophet is sent back to deliver a message to King Saul. And there are those who are so convicted that ghosts don't exist that they will deny that the Bible says that. But the Bible never says anywhere that Saul was deceived, that something claiming to be Saul was. No, it identifies this Elohim coming up from the ground as Samuel.
And the witch of Endor was terrified.
Right. So, and this was her bailiwick.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we often call her the witch, but really she was a medium.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what she was.
Word was the Ov, which means speaking to the spirits of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
But what came up was not her familiar, which was probably a demon.
Mm-hmm.
It was something other, and that's why she cried out with a loud voice. And that's when she realized she'd been deceived and recognized Saul for who he was. So if God allows it, I assume, because God allowed Samuel to go and deliver this message, ghosts may come back and deliver specific messages when they're allowed by God, but it's not the normal procedure. Ghosts don't hang around the earth waiting to complete unfinished business.
Right.
I think those are demons that are deceiving humans into thinking.
That's what I think too, and I think that it's very possible that they can find their way onto film or digital media if they want to make themselves known or perceived. That clearly and it may not be always okay. I just want to walk out here and see a ghost, because the pictures and I'll show them to you if I can find them. The pictures that I printed out after taking them in this cemetery not far from where I grew up. It was it was a neat old church and a neat old cemetery, and I thought, this is a great picture. There are these foggy things coming up out of some of the graves.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what they were. It could have been just a strange atmospheric thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that there are other people who have taken the same thing, and I wasn't looking to see a ghost that day. I just thought, this is a neat picture.
It is interesting, though, that when they talking about the Xbox detector again, that this Gizmodo editor said, well, we can't test it. Well, okay, we get that you don't really know what you're looking for. You're basically trying to create a detector to detect something that you don't know what it is. And so how do you set the parameters and the detectors and the sensors? Okay, I get all that. But by the same token, flip that on its head. How do you know that you're not going to get something?
Well, the interesting thing is, if it were a film camera, you could make the excuse that it's a leak. There's light coming in from someplace. And if you see it over and over again with the same camera, you have to try the same setting, different camera. If it's a digital camera, you're not going to get that. So you have to blame the algorithm. That's your only choice.
Yeah.
So if an algorithm is showing them deceitful images,
that's really curious.
What's up with the algorithm?
Yeah.
What's it trying to pull?
Well, as we've speculated before, an algorithm or an artificial intelligence may be the way the enemy fabricates or
inhabits.
To create give life to the image of the beast. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So I thought that was a really interesting story. So I was glad that you remembered actually seeing it.
Yeah. I think Tom might have seen that, and maybe that's or Tom Horn forwarded that to us. I think as a possible topic for Sci Friday. Speaking of, did we talk about the cryptocurrency thing blocking the search for aliens?
I don't know that we did. We didn't talk about it on Sci Friday. No, we did not. Because Sci Friday, we talked all about the 536 event.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And if you've missed that Sci Friday, rather than recapitulate the whole thing here, we highly recommend either watching it or listening to the audio only version of it, because it's a fascinating time of history when a lot of things turned that moved people groups around in ways that we take for granted today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's just a fascinating period of history, too, because there were some big geopolitical shifts that took place in the 6th century that probably resulted directly from these this strange climate event that took place in 536.
Yeah. As many as 13% of the world population died in the decade after that event because of a plague. But it also caused people to move to get food, and therefore they had to conquer new areas to get the food.
Right, yeah. And 536 was a year, according to the Annals Cambriae, which is the Welsh Annals, was the year that Arthur died. So King Arthur, assuming he was a historic person, died in the early part of the 6th century. There was also a very powerful Welsh king called Maelgwn Gwynedd, who was really established the the royal house, the line of the most powerful of the Welsh kingdoms until Edward Longshanks pretty much brought the Welsh to heel.
My ancestor.
Yep. And and my Welsh ancestors were, but
mine took yours down.
They did. Although I've also got Germans where they were still in Germany. At the
but
time.
I've also got Scottish ancestors. So my own ancestor took my ancestors. Oh.
Yeah. And I've got some English too. So Angles and Saxons. So between, the two of us, we basically represent all, and the Swedish in me, the Vikings.
Yep.
Some
loved opera, some loved barbershop. So, that's what the whole fight was about.
Exactly. Every stakeholder in the British Isles is represented in the two of us. But anyway, Maelgwn Gwynedd, who was a powerful king in that period of history, died in 536 as well, or shortly thereafter, probably because of the plague of Justinian.
Yeah,
right?
and so what happened at the time was that it was, again, watch Sci Friday, but it was a celestial event, or possibly the explosions of various volcanoes. Mm-hmm. But essentially the sun and the moon were darkened, so you had failure of many crops, and you literally had the Dark Ages. That's why the medieval period commenced. It was literally the Dark Ages. Yeah.
And that the world is more interconnected than we thought because, as you pointed out during that program, the bacterium that may have resulted in the plague.
Yersinia pestis.
Yersinia pestis, yeah. Probably originated in China and came from China and then spread across the Middle East and then as far as Britain.
Yeah.
So
fascinating stuff.
Yeah. Stuff more connected than we thought. Well,
did you see the squirrel?
Oh, at the Winter Olympics?
Yes.
Yeah.
Look, I want to tell you, squirrels have been plotting against mankind for decades.
Well, yeah, they had that.
The grid going down?
The power grid, the big northeastern power outage because of a squirrel. Mm-hmm. Right.
You ever see them sitting up in the trees? They got the little hard hats on, plans.
Yeah.
You don't trust them.
Throwing acorns at, jetliners trying to bring down planes.
Oh, yeah. So,
the squirrel that ran out during the, what was it? It
was the Winter Olympics in Korea.
What was the event, though? It looked like they were surfing down the side of the mountain. I don't know. That's not what you call it. What was it? Skiing, but on like a surfboard is kind of
I'll
what
have to look and see exactly what it was.
Anyway,
squirrel.
The squirrel running out across the mountain there as the competitors were coming down the mountain.
It was hilarious. I mean, that squirrel was it was like, where'd that come from? Snowboarding,
okay, yeah. Protesting the exclusion of Squirrellandia from the Winter Olympics. Almost caused the one competitor to lose it. I mean, just imagine as you're going down and suddenly who sees a squirrel running around at this time of year when it's the snow everywhere anyway?
I know, it makes no sense whatsoever.
Hibernating?
You would think so.
Yeah.
Isn't that why they gather up all of those acorns?
You'd think so. Well, anyway.
I don't know.
That was really funny.
Don't trust him.
Yeah.
Here's another one. Here's a decider. Did The Simpsons predict the rogue squirrel event at the 2018 Winter Olympics? Because there's a picture. There's a picture of Homer in a cabin looking out the window, screaming because there's a squirrel outside. Huh. That is so funny. Well, I'll send this to you. Let me see if I could show you the picture.
Oh, yeah. Well, anything that...
if it was on The Simpsons.
It was on The Simpsons, yeah. The Simpsons predicted an awful lot of history. Well, I thought the Moonies had gone away, had faded into history when Sun Myung Moon died in 2013.
That was what we thought.
But apparently not. There's a... what are they calling this? A life registration blessing that'll take place in Pennsylvania this coming Wednesday, the 28th.
Did I save that to 5 and 10?
Yes. It's called Cosmic True Parents of Heaven, Earth, and Humanity. Cheon Il-guk, Book of Life Registration Blessing. Cosmic True Parents of Heaven, Earth, and Humanity.
That's very strange. The church has a website. You can go there and you can they have a lot of these blessing ceremonies.
Yes, the Unification Church was founded by Sun Myung Moon. He was really politically active and influential back in the 80s, where he was, in fact, Moon, speaking of the media again, owned the Washington Times newspaper and United Press International.
And there was a big
UPI
event in Washington where he was crowned.
Yeah, Washington, D.C.
Remember that?
There were members of Congress who were there.
Well-known, well-respected, conservative members of Congress there.
Right. And Moon, in fact, there was a website I used to track for a while, 10 years ago when we were still looking at this, because Moon was still alive. Again, he didn't pass until 2013, who's referred to in this press release from the Unification Church, True Father.
Yeah.
There was a website that tracked his activity and his political influence called IApproveThisMessiah.com. And it documented some, just a lot more political influence than you would expect for a self-proclaimed Messiah, which is what Sun Myung Moon was. And, if you grew up in the era in which we did, 70s and 80s, you would remember the Moonies. I mean, these were people who were, accosting you at airports and asking for money and stuff like that.
This happened in 2004. Crowning at the Capitol creates quite a stir. Trying to see if there's a list of all the people who were at this event, but I'll share it with you. Wasn't that hard? It was in the Dirksen building. Mm-hmm. And Trent Lott was there. That's how I found it in the first place. I'd put in Sun Myung Moon and Trent Lott. I remembered that. Susan Irby, a spokeswoman for Senator Lott, said staff members were examining the application filed in the name of the Washington Times Foundation to see if there were any violations of Senate rules. Of the crowning ceremony, it's my understanding that what they were doing was recognizing Mr. and Mrs. Moon as parents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cosmic true parents. Well, on February 28th, according to this press release, all brothers and sisters who believe that true father, Sun Myung Moon, is the Messiah, and that Hyung Jin Moon is his representative and heir in the physical world, who has inherited the true parent's authority and preserves the words and practices established by true father, are invited to participate in an historic perfection stage Book of Life registration blessing that true father promised. They can participate by attending the ceremony to be held at fill in blank here. I'm not going to promote it, but get this. The accoutrements of the kingdom are a foundation of faith and substance to unite with God's providence at this time. Blessed couples, all heterosexual couples, according to the press release, are requested to bring the accoutrements of the nation of Cheon-il-guk, crowns representing the sovereignty of kings and queens, and a rod of iron.
Oh, that's Jesus Christ territory.
But wait. Designated by the second king as an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle or equivalents such as AK semi-automatic rifle, representing both the intent and the ability to defend one's family, community, and nation of Cheon-il-guk.
Oh.
If unable to purchase and legally transport such a rod of iron because of laws barring the purchase of such weapons or other reasons, couples are invited to purchase a $700 gift certificate from a gun store as evidence of their intent to purchase a rod of iron in the future.
So that's why they're having the blessing ceremony.
Yes.
Of the guns.
Yes.
That is very disturbing. Very disturbing. Well, I'm looking at more information on this blessing ceremony, this crowning ceremony from back in 2004. And I may have misspoken. Trent Lott may not have been there. I'm trying to find an actual list of all those who attended. But what's interesting is, according to TheGuardian.com, leading black Democrats also played a prominent role in the March ceremony.
That's really curious.
Illinois Congressman Danny Davis wore white gloves and carried a purple cushion.
Danny Davis?
Bearing a medieval-style International Crown of Peace, which was placed on Mr. Moon's head.
He's very progressive. You wouldn't have thought that, because Sun Myung Moon is very politically very conservative.
Exactly. Yeah. This was strange. Yeah. I remember at the time that it was strange. We should probably find our P.I.D. radio from this, because I know we talked about it.
Yeah. When was this again? This was
2004.
Okay. And P.I.D. radio started in 2005.
That's right. But I know you and I talked about it, so probably it was just in our homes. P.I.D. radio in our heads.
That's right. So, I said he died in 2013. My mistake. He died, Sun Myung Moon, in September of 2012, September 3rd, 2012, at the age of, was it 88? 98. No, 90. Think, Derek. 80 plus 12 is 92. 92 at the age of 92.
Oh, are we going to have to call in Rabbi Khan to do the math?
Yes. So anyway, yeah, it's this is really bizarre because I was looking at this at first, just the opening couple of paragraphs on the press release, or from this press release for this ceremony coming up on the 28th, is similar to ceremonies that they've had in the past with the Unification Church, where they would just take men and women who didn't even know each other and say, okay, you two go together, you and you, you and you, and you and you. Okay. And then he would marry them.
Yes.
And like
sometimes thousands at a time.
Thousands at a time. So I thought this was something like that until we got to the rod of iron part. And I was like, oh, wait a second. You keep using that phrase. I don't think it means what you think it means.
No, it does not.
Yeah.
Before he died, I know that Sun Myung Moon was trying to build what he called a peace bridge in the Bering Strait. He wanted to own the North.
Right. He also had a big plot of land down in Paraguay above the, what's the name of that aquifer that...
Exactly. And I think that there was a rumor at the time that the Bush family had some land down there as well.
Yeah.
And honestly, if there's going to be a war for anything in the future, it is not oil, it will be water. Right.
I'm going to look that up here because it's a fairly well-known name. I think that there is a... we talked about this back in 2008. Land grabs in Paraguay. What is the name of the aquifer? Because it sits right on top of, I think, the largest freshwater, the Guarani.
That's right.
It's a brand of bottled water. Guarani aquifer. It's the largest freshwater aquifer in Latin America. So, And you're right. It will be water wars. It won't be oil. It will be water. It will be the biggest thing, which is ironic that we're living in a planet that's, 3/4 water, but... because it's cheaper to dig it out of the ground than it is to desalinate, especially if you live way inland from the ocean. Just grabbing up the land on top of the aquifer is a big deal.
We live in a crazy world. We're out of time.
We do. Well, just one last thing, and I probably saving the best for last, is that we note the passing of Billy Graham this week. He died at the age of 99.
99.
Yeah, February 21st. And we were... able to attend one of his last crusades back in 1999 in St. Louis at the old TWA Dome, then later the Edward Jones Dome. Now it's something else again. But
I think Charlie Daniels played there that night.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I know Michael W. Smith was one of the performers at that, but I think you're right. I think it was Charlie Daniels the night we were there. But he was there for several nights, and I think over 200,000 people. Yeah, he came to St. Louis 3 times in his life, 53, 73, and 99. And it was a 4-day crusade at the TWA Dome, about 40,000 people there each night.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
And if you've never attended one of those, if you never had the joy of getting to do that, it is really quite an experience. And it reminds you of why we're here. You may have things you want to say about any individual who is in the public eye or in the spotlight, but the bottom line is that I believe that there are many in heaven who walked up to this great man and are still doing so because the line's probably really long,
right,
just to shake his hand.
I know a lot of people were critical of his friendship with American presidents, going all the way back to Harry S. Truman. He was especially close to Eisenhower, Nixon.
Look, there are a lot of prophets in the Old Testament who were really close to the kings. Do you really want to start complaining because a man of God gets to talk to the world leaders?
Yeah, exactly. And there are some who said he was too ecumenical in his outreach. Look, he brought people in and he presented them with the gospel. And in fact, that was a book at Skywatch TV that we offered in one of the packages back in 2015 called My Reason for Hope, Salvation. I think that was the title. It was published in 2013. But we looked at the book before we added it to the package, and his presentation of the gospel message was clear and it was uncompromised. Basically, we're all sinners. We all need salvation.
The reason for my hope.
Yeah. And the only way to get salvation is by grace through faith in Jesus Christ. He laid it out. He didn't mince words. He didn't say, what's right for you may not be right for me, and this is what I believe from my faith. No, none of that weaselly talk. It was very clear. So, Billy Graham gone home to be with the Lord. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, a couple of now we'll set that aside. It's it is marks the end of an era.
It really does, and he will be missed.
Yeah.
But we all need to do that daily. We need to remember that. Yeah, it's interesting to follow these rabbit trails and things like that, because you and I do that every day.
Right.
But our Great Commission is to lift up Christ and Him crucified, right, to spread the gospel to the ends of the earth.
That's it. If all of this fascinating intellectual exercise or academic exercise that we get doesn't come back at the end of the day to that, then we're just amusing ourselves and
mm-hmm.
not really serving in any way. So he said when he was asked by a reporter that he didn't expect a big reception when he got into heaven, but I suspect it may have been a little bit bigger than what he thought.
I think so too.
Well, thank you for listening. Until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening. P.I.D. Radio is a production of Gilbert House Ministries. The opening theme is adapted from The Alchemist's Tower by Kevin MacLeod, www.incompetech.com. The closing theme is Right Light by Joe Horn and Broken for Good. Find their album Right Where You Stand at Spotify and the iTunes Music Store. Our website is PIDradio.com, where you'll find the show notes, links to our personal websites, and links to connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The content of this program is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution No Derivatives 4.0 International License. For more information, see creativecommons.org.
I woke up this morning with some aching in my head. Darkness could have stuck around and filled my day with dread, but it's gonna be alright. Gonna be just fine for me. Turning on the right light is gonna set me free. This life seems way too willing to try and knock me down. I just know there's a way I can turn it all around. It's gonna be alright. Gonna be just fine for me. Turning on the right light is gonna set me free.